Welcome to Plenamente. This is season 2 of the podcast I've been hosting for since 2024. And as I've told you before, in this season, I'm going back and forth between Portuguese and English, and also having this experience, and also, to be very honest, having this very fun experience to navigate between the two languages and different expertise and cultures. So today, I have the pleasure to talk with Louise Mowinckel, and you will get to listen to her in a moment. I will read just a little bit about Louise so you can already start to have an image or a picture of who she is. She's a cognitive behavioral coach. She has a master's degree in psychology, a member of the ICSP-BPS. Am I saying this correctly?
Yes.
And she's a certified neurohealth practitioner. As you will have the chance to listen to her, she's an experienced coach, a very talented. How do I say this in English? A person that has a good conversation. Louise, can you help me out?
Oh, conversationalist.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for helping me this one, and I would invite you to tell us a little bit about yourself, of course, from your own perspective.
Yes. Thank you so much, first of all, for this opportunity to have this engaging conversation with you on the importance of self-knowledge. I actually define myself as a lifelong learner of human nature. And so this topic speaks very close to my heart in that regard. And so I do specialize in personal development and stress management and work primarily with people in midlife and most recently in quarter life, helping them to start a new chapter of psychological well-being. Um, so today is a fantastic opportunity to have this conversation with you. So thank you for having me.
Yes, amazing. And you were talking about the gap of ages that usually work between 30s and 60s. Is that correct?
Yes, midlife actually now with longevity, it's been expanded. So
Mhm.
fortunately, it is a large cohort. So it does sort of range between your 30s and 60s.
So,
So that is a very volatile period of a lot of many hats that people have to wear. So there's a lot of changes and transitions within that window.
mhm. This season is called the Global Season. Experts from around the world help us thrive. So that's what we're searching for: how ways to thrive at life and at work. And you were talking about this period of life. What happens between 30s and 60s?
Well, you're making some of the most important life decisions that shape your trajectory. And for many of
Mm,
us, that is a crossroads that we come to. First being in young adulthood, in your 20s and 30s. And you're making decisions about who you are, what you want to be, your career, your partner, where you want to live. There's a lot that's packed into that. And many of us usually find ourselves having to make a decision
mm,
very soon and then staying on that trajectory. However, as we know, life seems to throw all types of curveballs and changes. And
yeah.
work culture is very different today than it was when I won't give away my age, but in my when I started. And of course, we commit to that, but we have to then adjust as well. So there's a lot of transitioning that happens in between. And then of course it builds from that point on. And then again, you get to midlife and there's another opening and another pathway. And yet you have another opportunity to reflect on where you are, where you want to go, and what you want to do.
Mhm.
So the self knowledge piece is you have wisdom on your side and experience as you get older.
Yeah. And you use a very interesting word because you talked about opportunity.
Yes.
So, in my mind, I was picturing all the crises that we may face throughout life, but you use this word, opportunity. Can
I
you?
love, yes,
Yeah.
I love that you picked up the word crisis because, and opportunity in the same sentence, because that leads us into the concept of mindset,
Mm,
which is very essential in our trajectory, in our developmental growth. And what feels like a crisis, if it's very real and very palatable and very
yeah.
tangible, and it
Yes.
and it impairs our decision to think clearly in those moments many
Mm-hmm.
times, depending, of course, on the severity of it. And crisis, moving from crisis to sort of opportunity, there's a lot in between there that can be unpacked. But and it's not as simple as binary one or the other. So that's where the learning comes. That's where the self knowledge
Yeah.
comes.
So, what are the crises that come to your agenda and you need to help people address?
In my experience, well, again, taking both ends,
Mm-hmm.
the early stages of young adulthood, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of demand that the client is internalizing, which is driven by a fear of failure,
Okay.
imposter syndrome. That shows up quite a lot because there's a lot of importance in around what that looks like for them in make choosing the right pathway.
So when you're working with younger clients, the fear of failure, and I will just connect the two structures that you work with, crisis and opportunity. So this is the crisis. What are the opportunities here when you're working with someone?
The opportunity is the which find is the most salient is sharing with them their sense of agency,
Hmm.
reminding them of their sense of agency, and helping them have the tools in order to put that into action.
Okay.
Therefore, they feel that they have that self efficacy, that ability to positively influence um, their their life in a way that is going towards their goals.
Okay. So I'm not going to be passive and fearful, but I will um, move and have the ability to take some actions in order to thrive, something like that. The
Exactly.
sense of agencies, the
Same sense of
agencies.
agency and replacing it with curiosity.
Okay.
Replacing fear with curiosity. Because the anxiety comes in wanting to know and be certain, but no one knows many things for certain. But what you do know is you know yourself, and you cannot suffer imposter syndrome about yourself. So the
Mm,
more you know yourself, then you feel that sense of confidence to look at the decisions that you're making in through the lens of your strengths and your vision and your values.
okay. uh, Being also a work psychologist, usually when working with younger professionals, the one of my favorite tools to help them develop is exactly curiosity about senior professionals that can show them ways. You don't have to do it exactly like that, but you can leverage on their knowledge and helping them be curious about the pathway that they're following, and who can help them get the knowledge or the tools or the people that can help them build their career, for instance. That came to my mind. uh,
Yes, I think they once you're in the work environment, it's very important to encounter managers and
mm,
peers who share this growth mindset, which is
yeah.
a term that is fundamental to imparting knowledge in a way that remains curious, but also has a competency base to it, so that
Yeah.
the learning can have a feedback loop of being in the learning zone without fear of having to be perfect in
So
that performance.
this is so important for newcomers, and also for leaders and people that have the 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 responsibility of guiding newcomers in the process. Often we are designing onboardings and processes, and helping people come into our structures. And often we talk about uh, the logistics, the benefits, and that newcomer has so many things going inside, inclusive the the fear of failure. And especially if you were hired as a talent, so you're expected to perform in your first week. And so this is so important, to overcome that, and to connect these generations of workers, not just in terms of ages, but in terms of expertise. When I talk about generations, it's more about expertise. How much do I know about this specific path?
Yes, yes, it is very important. And of course, this intergenerational partnership that is
Hmm.
formed and understanding what is of importance for the younger generation when they enter into their careers, um, it's very fluid. It's very fluid. And, but at the same time, there has to be a meeting point of shared values and interests and the possibility of growth through the learning process. And the more that that's built into the culture, the more that you have a internal structure. And of course, every all growth happens within a systemic culture,
Hmm.
of some shape or form. As long as the human element is paired with the profit and performance outcome, you have a good dynamic and a good base to start with.
Hmm. And before we come into this path, you were sharing about the crisis that come. So this was the lower in terms of age. So if we move one, what comes next? And you don't have to share everything, but maybe the either your preferred ones or the most frequent ones that come in the next step.
Well, what I'm noticing, which is fun, which is really quite interesting, is our quest for knowledge and where that takes place in the workplace is the normal pathway for most people. And but people work in different areas, in different industries, in different
Hmm.
sectors, and so there's you're still needing to feel a sense of autonomy, belongingness, and competency. That's what drives people in their motivation, that those three essential needs are addressed. So, as I mentioned, it might not be a straight linear path, but knowing yourself is fundamental to matching that up with where you feel your strengths lie. And
Mm.
therefore, we go back to knowing what they are. And this is something that takes a little time to find the
Mm.
language for, but to
Okay.
identify what do you feel your core competencies are, your signature strengths are. What are your values? How does who you're going to work for, how does that integrate in some way so that you can be aligned in that
So
philosophy?
and I can see that happen either at the beginning of your career or when you want to make a change. And often, if you're in your 40s, for instance, and you've worked for about 20 years or something like that, and you already know so many things, but you can be caught up in a place where you say, I don't know, how can I add, or how do I add value to organization? What are my skills? Because as you were saying, it requires a language,
Yes.
especially if we always work in a specific area. And
Mm.
often I listen to people saying, the only thing I can do is this. And there are so many skills within it. And you, like you said before, it needs to be unpacked.
Interesting. Before we go down that answer specifically, I would like to just take a step back because um, self knowledge, if we define what the self is and we define knowledge, it becomes a broader conversation
Hmm.
where the two meet in the middle. So the self governs your inner narrative and embodies your sense of sovereign agency and personal identity. Whereas you can have a working identity that is multiple. You can have multiple jobs across your career in your lifetime, but the self stays somewhat, coherent and consistent along
Hmm.
that trajectory. So what you're, and that changes depending on what you're, where you are, which chapter you are in your life. So in your 20s and 30s, what are you doing? You're building your professional expertise. You want experience. And so you're much more receptive and open to opportunities that and having mentors and what skill sets are being developed. And you're not expected to know everything. Otherwise, there's nothing to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to sort of bear in mind that you're in the learning zone and it takes many, many years to develop a skill set and a competency through practice. So there's a lot happening in those years, but you're all at the same time developing and aligning it with, does this actually feed my vision of how I see myself, what my self portrait is?
Yeah. Um, I don't know if I'm going to throw you a curveball. Let's see how both of us can handle it, because we're both psychologists. We met at a supervision group in 2023, I believe. Yeah,
Uh,
in
yeah,
February
2022, because now we're in
22.
the third. Yes.
Is it the third? I thought it. Yes, it is. I thought it would. It was February 2023. Well, we've been part of the same group supervision. We met personally in Lisbon because you have become. I don't know if a citizen or not. That's not. But you live in our country now, so we're lucky to have you here as well. But we met in this international group supervision of psychological coaches.
Yes.
So what has been, which has been a very good experience for us. For me, it has been. It's a safe space where we can have conversations about our practice and how we can keep growing,
Yes.
and to have a mentor that help us, and peers that either give us advice or challenges. So it's a very safe space to continue growing in this area. So I guess we can manage this one. That is, um, you were saying that we need time to develop a set of skills, but we live in an era of urgency where we need, or we want, independent of the age we have, we want to achieve results really quickly, either in terms of learning abilities. There are a lot of offers, for instance, of micro learning. We want
Mm,
to narrow the skills, narrow the experience, the amount of time, uh, make things cost effective. And then when I do interviews with younger people, they do share their career plans, and they are fast paced. They want to eat the ground running, you know. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? CEO. And you go like, whoa. Before your 30s then. Um, and this reminds me of navigating this, and also something that you were sharing before, the stress.
mm,
Because it comes within all of this that we are sharing, because we're talking about um, managing ourselves throughout the life cycle and the career, and also living in an era of urgency, of cost effectiveness. And this, to me, I see everything is tangled.
yes. There's two sides to that. First, I would admit, the first to admit, this younger generation is the most educated and higher education than any other generation before them. So their capacity and their bandwidth is, and their intention is to go much faster and quicker in the sense of urgency. While that is very ambitious and admirable, it does tend to lead itself into this feeling of, again, running very close to imposter syndrome if it doesn't happen fast enough for them. And this slowing it down and is necessary to integrate certain skills and put it into practice and then internally. So you can't rush everything as far as the learning cycle goes, but you should know, or it's not to say should, but it's important to know how you learn best, if that's the case. And everyone learns differently. And that trajectory can speed up, but the cycle doesn't.
We're still
So,
humans in our nature. Of what I hear you say is that we can grab the competency, but then we need to integrate it in ourselves, and to let our mind and brain do their work of we use this word in work psychologies, that is the capability. I
mm,
can have the capacity, but I need to be able to use it in my set of skills in the situations I'm facing daily at my work or life.
yes, and of course, what I notice with younger clients in particular is that they see a fixed outcome in what they anticipate will happen. And if the outcome doesn't fit that vision, that's when there's a big swing. There's a big,
Yeah.
and this is again, how the body is designed, that it's going to flood you with all of these feelings of crisis and what's wrong with me and why haven't I been able to do this, and why couldn't I, is there something that, or attributing blame to why it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. So this is very important, again, to know that there is it, you have to break it down into smaller micro steps in order to let your body internalize that knowledge and be able to then perform on a consistent level that
Mhm.
you feel is optimal.
And later in life, there is a different type of stress career, if you want to, or life. That is the the sense that you don't have, you don't have the time to make the
Mm.
change, or you're no longer valuable or have enough ability to make that change. And I believe that you also work with that, right?
Yes, that is what helps very much in that area. This is when we suddenly have another opening in our time, when we're able to prioritize a little bit more. When your kids are small, you can't have it all, and you usually have to put something on hold.
Yeah.
And as you go through your different career trajectories, and then you find that you get a little bit of that time back. What's important here is understanding that your brain plasticity and is still evolving, and you
Mm,
actually have an enormous capacity to learn and take that window and find something, surprise yourself, to
yeah.
find something inside of you that has been sitting almost dormant for a while, and revive it. So this brings a bit of excitement, but at the same time, it's a novelty. It's new. It's something new for you to embrace. If you if you have the mindset again and knowledge that you can follow that path. So as an example, I always had a vision of myself as uh, being a mother, an artist, and a psychologist. And all three could not happen at the same time. So once the original, onset of my career took one direction and I had to
Hmm.
change pathways, I was actually able to later on say to myself, what's stopping you from just trying to go back and see about painting and being an artist? And I remember standing there in front of this blank canvas and saying to myself, but I don't have the skills to do this.
Mm.
And my instructor at the time said, you have eyes, draw what you see.
Oh, amazing.
And all of a sudden, just freeing yourself of this need to have said that I needed this competency, I needed this skill. I didn't go to architectural school, I didn't do the, drawing, I didn't go to drawing class. It it frees you when you have this curiosity and creativity to just explore. And that's a very interesting concept to embrace, that you have this ability to learn, regardless of your age.
Amazing. And I stopped when you were talking to yourself, because um, I believe it's probably at the core of self knowledge. And often when I work with someone at a clinical side, uh, I will remove my coach, my coach hat or hat of coach. I don't know. Now I'm becoming troubled by Portuguese English interconnections, and I'm going to the clinical psychologist side. I explained that we are creating an environment where you can listen to yourself, speak out loud, and to be connected to your own thoughts and ideas about the situations you're going through in life. And so this sounds pretty simple, but it's so powerful when you are in a room with a stranger
Mm,
and you're listening to your own voice out loud and you're saying things about yourself, and you actually become, you start shaping what you're seeing about yourself and the ability to share it. That's why working with a therapist or a coach is such an important thing when you go into this journey, to actually be in a safe space, because you're shaping, with the help of another, how you're seeing yourself, and also how would you would like to see yourself in the next stage of life. So this was what was coming to my mind. I was listening to you.
Mm, yes, if you hold your hand very close to your face, you can't see it very clearly. You need to pull it back a little bit to have a better perspective. And what we, in our perspective, is always filtered in by our own biases and expectations, and we don't always see, um, and we don't see from the same perspective as others. Um, so having a space where you can explore that and feel that it's developing you in a way that helps you see from the other person's perspective, um, that's enhancing your self-knowledge.
Yeah. So this is was an amazing conversation to me. I would really like to finish this episode uh, with you, Louise. Any thoughts or final thoughts about our conversation? I really trust you to uh, leave us with some final thoughts that, because of this conversation, or something that you had already thought before the episode. So be
Mm.
totally free to express yourself and lead us to the end, because I know you're very good at this.
Well, I will say that, one of the things when you're looking at evaluating, how you're responding to a certain situation, I see the cognitive triangle as a really important visual tool that helps you notice your relationship between your thoughts, feelings, and your behaviors. And that is fundamental to sort of going through the process of identifying, um, how can you respond to different changes in your life, um, and identify areas where you feel that you could shift your energy towards something that helps you thrive better in different challenging situations. So closing that stress response is really an important factor, for being able to shift your mindset from, um, just sort of struggling to actually achieving your goals.
So being so stressed about this crisis I'm facing at the moment, that I can even uh, turn my eyes up and see the opportunity that I have. Like you said, a new opening that has come in my pathway, in only looking at the part of the crisis. And so I have to be able to manage this stress that I'm feeling inside, in order to have that sense of agency that you were
Yeah.
talking about.
Yes, exactly. To sort of lower the stress response so that you actually can, open up your thinking to more alternative outcomes and possibilities.
Yeah, this is so amazing. And actually, it does happen a lot at our practice to uh, talk with people that are addressing crisis, uh, um, so hurt by stress.
Yes,
And it's
yes.
all about what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about this, and not being able to step out of that and seeing the opportunity. Well, we could have conversations all day long. we could keep it going. So I will just thank you again for this opportunity to share your knowledge and your work. And I really hope that this was a useful conversation. I'm really sure it will be for people that. You said a very interesting sentence before we start recording. That was something about moving from stress to thriving. Do you still remember that stress, that sentence?
Yeah, and yes, I believe I was mentioning that, moving the from the crisis mode into sort of thriving mode.
Yeah,
Um, yes, it's a continuum. It's a continuum, and you need the stress knowledge, the knowledge to sort of help yourself find that emotional balance.
yeah. Move. I like that. Moving from the stress mode to the thriving mode. That's amazing.
Yes, and
Yeah,
finding that middle ground, which is the emotional balance of rest and recovery.
amazing. Okay. Thank you again, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure we will meet again.
Thank you for having me.